Hello everyone, it is Brandon again for another video. So, in today's video, I'm doing a book review of this book here, which is Shambhala, The Sacred Path of the Warrior by Chögyam Trungpa. Chögyam Trungpa was a lineage holder teacher in Tibetan Buddhism. And he came later on in his life, maybe about 2/3 of the way, halfway through his life. He came to the United States and began teaching back in maybe the 60s, 70s, 80s kind of time frame. So he was a very well-known teacher. He made a big impact in Western Buddhism, and Buddhism kind of taking hold in the West and people starting to finally understand it at a deeper level. So this is the third book by him that I have read. I'll just show the book again. And I'm very impressed by all of his writings, and I'm currently reading a fourth book by him. But anyway, so let's get into what the book is about. And just so you know, this video, I'm going to be doing a book review, but also I'm going to do kind of an overview of what the book is about. Kind of break down what he teaches, what he writes about in this book. And as well, I will, kind of bring in some teachings, just spiritual teachings that will run in tandem with the contents of the book. If I have maybe had some experience or instruction or practice in like a form of Buddhism that runs in line with what's taught about in this book, or some other form of spirituality where I've learned something or experienced something that runs along with the book, I might bring in some of that experience just to elucidate some of the points that Chögyam Trungpa is making. So, part number 1, and this is going by, he has 3 main sections. Part number 1 of the book is How to Be a Warrior. Part number 2 is Sacredness, the Warrior's World. Part number 3 is Authentic Presence. So, these topics, I was really really happy to see what this book was about. The more that I got into the book, the more that I read, I was just really excited to turn another page. He's a very good writer. Does a really good job of getting your attention, as well as getting tons of useful information across very quickly. One of the great things is a lot of his books don't have to be that long, yet he gets so many good points across and really will kind of elevate your perspective to the next level. So let's get into how to be a warrior. What is a warrior in this sense? It's called the sacred path of a warrior. It's not someone who's necessarily going out and, killing other people to defend others or something like that. I mean, surely you could maybe have, in some sense, a warrior in that kind of field also be on the sacred path of the warrior laid out in this book. But this book is more about how can you be a warrior in the sense of living the best life you can and bringing yourself, your authentic self, to the world to do the most service to the world, to elevate the world, yourself, and those around you. That is what being a warrior is about in a nutshell, according to what Chögyam Trungpa is talking about in this book. So, the first chapter is creating an enlightened society. And, it's pretty straightforward in the sense that, this book is created for that purpose. It's basically creating a new secular lineage of a spiritual sort of practice, and it's using different terminology, different phrases, but at the end of the day, it's kind of mirroring much of what you might find in another spiritual teaching, whether it be, a major religion like Christianity. It runs very close in line with Buddhism, And as well, things like Hinduism or Taoism are not a far shot from what this tradition is about. And Shambhala is actually a formal tradition that Chögyam Trungpa began. And it's essentially a secular way to get into much of what those other religions or spiritual traditions might be about, but it's more accessible to certain people in the modern era who maybe have their reasons that they don't want to be involved in religion that much. And as well, I think it just stands alone as its own tradition. It has a lot of good things about it. A lot of reasons to check out this book. If you're a spiritual practitioner, I highly recommend it. So anyway, creating an enlightened society by being a warrior of the world, by elevating yourself spiritually, bringing your best to the table. That makes good sense, not too complicated of an idea. The second chapter gets into discovering basic goodness. Now, basic goodness is one of the kind of foundational topics of this book. What is basic goodness? I really love Chögyam's examples where he discusses things like the sun rising and setting each day. You could even look into things such as gravity holding us, in place, so to speak, so we don't fly off into space and die. There are many sort of natural orders to the world that we live in that maintain our world, that give us the ability to, if we do things right, to live wonderful lives, to live lives of passion and purpose, and to develop ourselves, to grow ourselves. But it really comes down to there is just a basic goodness within man, within humanity. There's a basic goodness within the earth, within the life that we've been given. And as we get into further parts of the book, a lot of it is realizing that there is basic goodness that we all have access to, no matter who we are, no matter how bad of a situation we're in. And we have the ability to improve our lives and to take on this journey of being a spiritual warrior. And we can improve ourselves and improve our surroundings and work towards creating an enlightened society. But really, it's just creating a better world. That's what we're involved in here. So, next, we have the chapter, The Genuine Heart of Sadness, chapter 3. What is this about? A lot of this is tapping into that, you could say, an almost wounded part of yourself, a very sensitive part of yourself that can recognize the difficulties that are inherent in this life, can recognize the suffering of others. And when you really tap in to your own genuine heart of sadness, this is like experiencing sadness at a cosmic level, at an existential level, at a peak emotional and intellectual level, really tapping into sadness beyond what you probably have ever before and doing it intentionally. Why would you tap into this sadness? Well, the purpose is basically to go on the warrior's path, to be a spiritual warrior. You see the full sadness of the world, the full sadness that you yourself go through, that others are exposed to. And by exposing ourselves to this sadness, what does this do? This gives us the courage and the motivation and the energy and the dedication to bring about a stronger version of ourselves, a better version of ourselves that is committed to service to this world, to building this world up. That is why we want to tap into this genuine heart of sadness. Chapter 4 is Fear and Fearlessness. Fearlessness is a topic in many of Chögyam Trungpa's books. What is fear and what is fearlessness? You could say in a very simple way, fear is ultimately trying to hold your individual self together in a way that limits your behavior. Maybe you limit your authenticity because you don't want to be harmed. You don't want bad things to happen by showing who you truly are. We all have this in our lives. We've all sheltered ourselves in ways. We've all censored ourselves in ways. And the fearlessness is really getting in ultimately to a form of self-expression that is far beyond what most of us work within in our daily lives. And this fearlessness also is going to, as we move on this warrior's journey, we're going to find that you can't have the full fearlessness without egolessness, without losing the ego or without seeing through the ego. We can't get to the true fearlessness. So that is a big part of it. I think many of you might know pretty well what I mean there. That's kind of a basic tenet or a basic teaching of many forms of Eastern spirituality, is going beyond the ego. So, Chapter 5, Synchronizing Mind and Body. And here we get into one of the most useful and just a great part of this book, very practical. This is where we get into the formal meditation instructions that Chögyam gives us. So, this is how to meditate in a Shambhala way. To meditate in the sense of this Shambhala warrior, you are going to have to recognize a certain dignity to yourself, an almost royal level of dignity within yourself. And why do we have this dignity? Are we getting ahead of ourselves? Are we just giving ourselves some false arrogance? No. This dignity ultimately comes from the basic goodness within us. And as you read the book, you'll understand more where this is coming from. But because of the basic goodness, and because of our choice to go on this warrior's journey to create a stronger, better version of ourselves, we're going to take on the dignity of a king or queen, essentially. And that's one way that we're going to approach our meditation. We're not going to approach our meditation with slouched posture or be distracted or loose with our meditation or go about it flippantly. What we're going to do is we're going to approach this as a warrior king of the world, very dignified, and we're going to do what he calls, bring up our head and shoulders. You're going to have your shoulders not drooped in, lifted up, straight, kind of almost taut a little bit. And you're as well going to have your head up. Now, as a further part of this, you are going to be sitting cross-legged, have your spine erect, sitting up straight, your shoulders, pulled back a bit. You'll essentially know, just feel into your own posture, and you'll likely pick up quite easily what dignified energy or dignified feeling does to your shoulder posture, your neck posture, your head posture. You'll see what that means. You'll feel into it. I have trust in that, and it's not that complicated. So anyway, you do this. You have an erect spine, crossed legs. I believe you can just place your hands on your knees, with your hands, maybe your arms almost bent at about a 90-degree angle, And just place your hands on your knees, your folded leg knees. And one of the nice things I really enjoy about this is you're going to slightly move your head down, as if you're staring about 6 feet in front of yourself. About one body length, essentially, in front of yourself. And you're actually going to keep your eyes open. Your eyes aren't going to be darting around looking at everything. Your eyes are going to be steadied. And you're essentially not going to blink. If you blink, you blinked so well. Get back to your point of focus. And you're not focusing on the vision per se. You're keeping the vision in the visual field in that way. You're keeping your eyes looking in that direction without blinking. But what you're now going to do is you're going to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. And your focus for the meditation is the sensations of your breath. Even most importantly, you're going to feel the sense of release that comes with the out breath. You kind of build yourself up and then release. And really paying attention to how you dissolve, how you yourself dissolve with that out breath. That's a big focus of this style of meditation, this technique. And some last considerations. You can also, he suggests, to use a method of noting. So each time you have a discursive thought, which means a thought basically with language, you hear yourself talking, some mental chatter is going on within your mind. When that's occurring, all you need to do is just say, in this mental space in your mind, just say thought. Just recognize clearly there is a thought occurring. You label the thought not as a specific thought in this system. All we're doing is just labeling it as thought. And each time a discursive thought arises, you label it as a thought and you move on. And one of the important things here is it doesn't matter what the content of the thought is. It doesn't matter if it's the greatest idea you think you've ever had and you're in love with the thought and it's awesome and you just can't wait to go create something with that thought. No, you're just going to label it as thought and move on. Continue back to your breath. So each time that you might get distracted with a thought or your attention straying to other sensations, maybe you start moving around your visual field, you look at what you're seeing and you get distracted there, bring your vision back to the focal point that we had before and then bring your attention back to your breath. And it's as simple as that. And one of the things I love about this technique is its simplicity. He doesn't go into too much more detail into what you need to do with this meditation. Of course, your experience in other meditation techniques can come into play and can help you here. But at the end of the day, the technique needs to only be as complex as what I've said right here. You might hear him describe a little bit more of how to perform the technique in the book. I do suggest read the book. That's the true full technique. I've described essentially the main parts of it. So if you perform that technique, you might think, oh, it's a pretty simple meditation. Well, the goal is to be fully kind of in the meditation with a lot of energy. And this is one of the great things about the posture. If you keep this posture and you also keep this sort of dignified attitude to your meditation, it just works. It keeps you from being distracted fairly well because there's a good amount of energy. In Buddhism, I believe it might be a factor of enlightenment, but either way, there are various kind of numerical lists or just lists in Buddhism of things that help you on the path, things that are necessary to become awakened. And energy is one of them. And a certain energy to your meditation, a certain level of, kind of just focus, energy, vigor, like you're with it. You're not falling asleep, you're not you're not dozing off. This posture helps a lot with the energy, it helps a lot with the focus. And when you do the meditation, you can be very intentional with it. Any thought that comes in, note thought, go back to the breath, stay with the breath, move on. If you really pay attention, you'll notice that you might be jumping away from the breath sensations very often. And all you need to do is label a thought if it happens. If you're not distracted by a thought, you might be distracted by paying attention to some sensations somewhere else. It could be a pain in your back, a pain in your leg, whatever it is. Bring your attention back to the breath. Okay, that was an important section. That's why I took a bit more time with it. Let's move on. Chapter 6, The Dawn of the Great Eastern Sun. What is the Great Eastern Sun? It ties in with the idea of basic goodness, the sun rising, and kind of nourishing life on Earth. But more so, the Great Eastern Sun gets into some... It's like a beautiful spiritual concept of what we can look for. It's really the enjoyment of life. It's looking at life in the way that you should as this spiritual warrior that we're becoming in this Shambhala system. You look at the good things in life. You don't look at life as death and things are decaying and ending and you must consume so much food or so much entertainment to get what you need in life. No, that is what he calls, it's essentially the opposite. It's a setting sun approach. And he ties the setting sun approach to kind of the way modern Western life has gone. And even since Chögyam's time has kind of passed and he's deceased now, we're quite a way away from the time when he was teaching. The world has kind of moved, like almost all of the world has moved into the kind of Western setting sun approach that he talks about. And, it's just consumerism. It's living life with probably less purpose, always focused on entertainment, trying to cling on to things, trying to cling on to life. With such great recognition that you're going to die. I mean, the Great Eastern Sun is really about being fully with the moment and just appreciating the beauty of the now, you could say. And there are many other elements that come in with that. It is one of the bigger topics that he discusses within the book. It's a recurring theme throughout the book. So I suggest get more information on what the Great Eastern Sun is from the author himself. I'm going to move on now. Chapter 7, The Cocoon. This idea is not too complicated. It's essentially, the cocoon is more or less you holding on to your ego, maybe connecting back with some fear. You're going to try to avoid this transformation process that's required to become a full-fledged warrior in this tradition. The cocoon is you going back to sleep in your ego world, straying away from egolessness. You hold on again to your identity, your old identities. You might be fearful. You might think that you can't take on the world as it's presenting to you. You can't handle your own affairs. So much of becoming a warrior in this system is just handling your own affairs. Literally keeping your shit together. And just knowing that no matter what happens, you can do it. You can keep your shit together to a certain degree. And you always have control over that. So the cocoon, just going back into the ego, going back into illusion, and failing to transform. You can also see the cocoon concept as tying in a bit to Plato's idea of the cave, if you are familiar with that, the cocoon would be like the cave. You're living the false life. Whereas Plato, once you get out of the cave, you kind of see reality as it truly is. And, people are still stuck in the cave, but you got to see the truth. That's kind of like the cocoon concept. So chapter 8, Renunciation and Daring. I'll be honest, this chapter isn't one that really sticks out to me at this moment in time. But if I would have to just take a bit of a guess on what he's talking about here, renunciation, he does speak about it in a little bit of a different sense than renunciation is normally spoken about in other spiritual traditions. Maybe I should just hold on that. Just keep in mind, he's talking about his own form of renunciation and daring. And this book is much about authenticity. And the renunciation, a lot of the time, is probably going to tie in with just the simple idea of going beyond the ego, seeing the spiritual truths that brings. And now, chapter 9, Celebrating the Journey. It's looking at your transformation in this system, becoming a more and more experienced warrior in these ways. Not rushing for the final form, the final product, the final end of you becoming the perfect warrior image in this tradition, or really rushing towards some result in any way in life. Celebrating the journey, you've heard it many times before probably in other teachings, other philosophies in life. Enjoy the journey that you're on right now. Enjoy the now, this moment. Be process focused, and your life will generally go better. 10. Letting go. Chapter 10, Letting Go. Letting go. Again, we can tie it in, just like other spiritual traditions, we can tie it in to kind of finally putting the ego to rest, almost like having a little funeral for yourself, for your lower self, for your old desires. Like, letting go, it's becoming more of your authentic self. It is not being afraid to express yourself to those around you. It's kind of like being naked to others, whereas everybody else is kind of going about life within their cocoons. They kind of are in the cocoon to try to separate themselves from the rest of reality. You, as the Shambhala warrior, you've broken out of your cocoon, and your body is exposed and you are vulnerable. But there's a great strength in that vulnerability, and bringing your own vulnerability to the world and showing that is a great sign of strength, because although others might be afraid to tell the rest of the world, to authentically show to the rest of the world what you actually are, you're going to show it. And that is going to encourage others to be more authentic. It's going to encourage them to not see themselves so badly. A lot of people, they'll go around in this cocooned life, kind of trying to live life in a suit of ego armor, making themselves look better, making themselves seem better than they are, hiding certain tendencies, hiding the quote-unquote bad parts of themselves. You go about life and you're just going to be what you actually are. When other people see that, they can know, I don't have to fake it as much. Look at that guy. That guy, John over there, he's a Shambhala warrior. He's not faking his life. And look how poised and happy and dignified he is. That's kind of the idea we're going for. So chapter 11, this is starting part 2, Sacredness, the Warrior's World. Chapter 11 is Nowness. we're getting more into talk of being present, being fully with this moment, being fully attentive to the sensations occurring right now, even to the thoughts occurring right now. You are living in this moment rather than some fantasy or dream born of the cocoon of your ego's fearful mind. Chapter 12, Discovering Magic. This is one of my favorite parts about this book, and I actually think about it. I think about my life this way regularly now. Chögyam Trungpa describes this idea of dralas, D-R-A-L-A-S for the plural. Dralas, what are dralas? They're like these magical spirits. And magic is really kind of, it's done by, there's magic in the sense of like working on your inner drala, which could be working on yourself in a sense, working on the inner parts of yourself. There's also external drala, which is your environment. Like it's almost like feng shui in a sense. Like, but the sense of like when you come home, let's say you come home to your house, and as a Shambhala warrior, you've been working on having an orderly house. You know, you don't leave you don't leave the laundry on the, you don't just throw your clothes on the floor when you get home. You don't just let the dishes pile up, or you take the time to shower regularly. It's basic stuff. But this is all kind of tying into this dignity that we're cultivating. You make your own space in your home or in your workplace actually clean and respectable and orderly, and there's a certain magic to that itself. But it's the dralas, like, as these sort of, entities, you might say, the dralas, when they see that you're being authentic and expressing yourself to others, and they see that you're taking the time to be careful with to give care to your external environments, to bringing like sacredness and like a level of holiness or that treatment to your regular environments. That's like the external drala principle. And there's one more, but the general idea of magic in this book is kind of like inviting in these positive spirits that just make things go well. Think about it. If you have your house in order, you have your own mind in order, you have you're just authentic. You really go and show yourself to the world. I truly believe like it doesn't, we don't have to make it mystical or magic, but more or less it's fucking magic the way that the results will occur. You do enough of the right, simple, basic things in life, and you do them well, life is going to come bring its fruits to show you that you have done it right. And so Chögyam recognizes, this is a kind of a secular system, Shambhala. It's not meant for being fully like religious. You're meant to take on this concept of dralas, they don't have to be true entities. It's a principle. It's a principle of when you have a certain care about the things in your life, when you have a certain energy and positivity that you put into what you're doing, when you care, the world reflects that care with its own magic. Things start to go well for you when you put your own sort of magic into the world by simply approaching things in a proper way. Okay. Chapter 13, how to invoke magic. I kind of explained that just there. So we'll kind of just count those chapters as one for right now. Chapter 14, overcoming arrogance. Again, it's such a big part is being dignified, seeing the basic goodness within yourself. That's part of being a Shambhala warrior. But overcoming arrogance is just like it sounds. You're no longer trying to appear bigger than you are or more important than you are or lying to yourself about what you are or what you've accomplished or what you can be. You get rid of the arrogance. It's simple, which goes back into the old egoless principle, which we started out, which is in many other forms of spiritual traditions. So, again, you've probably come in contact with that concept a bit, but if you haven't, here we're just touching on that again from a bit of a different angle. Chapter 15, overcoming habitual patterns. The cocoon concept, it relies on our old patterns. The ego relies on our old patterns. Our personality, our personal style, who we conceive of ourselves as, all of these tie into overcoming habitual patterns. One thing you'll find as you become more capable of expressing yourself authentically in the world, you're going to be most likely your life is going to be less of a pattern, less predictable. Because when you're living yourself in this kind of fearful, ego-constrained way, like we do so much of the time, you close down the possibilities of what you might do, how you might react. You try to follow the shoulds. You try to do what society thinks you should do, or your workplace thinks you should do, or your boss thinks you should do, or you try to follow this cultural norm, or repress yourself in this or that way. Getting out of habitual patterns is a natural part of getting beyond the limits of the ego. And I will say personally, it's my personal kind of revelation, belief, understanding that on any true spiritual path, whether you call it becoming a Shambhala warrior, becoming a true Christian, becoming awakened Buddhist, getting in the flow of the Tao, whatever it is, you're not going to be able to maintain the same habitual patterns that you had when living through fear. You cannot do that. You will change. Transformation is necessary. That's the whole point. We don't want to be who we were at the start when we were all fearful, ego-filled, arrogant, limited, toxic. You don't want that. You want to be a positive light in the world if you are on this journey of trying to become a sacred warrior. So, chapter 16, Sacred World. You can begin to see the entire world as sacred. You can even feel every breath you take, every moment you're in as sacred. And this is getting into spiritual levels of spiritual realization. This is getting into spiritual awakening territory. And this is just a natural part. Once you get out of your habitual patterns, once you become less arrogant, you see who you truly are, you realize a bit of magic in life, you're truly in the now, you let go of the things you've been clinging to in life, you celebrate the journey you're in right now. Like we can go through every chapter that's built up to this point. And you can just see, as you read the book and you're aware of what Chögyam Trungpa describes, you'll see it's a very natural progression. It just makes perfect sense. if you follow what he outlines in this book, you will get to the step of experiencing the sacred world. And I guess right here, I should say I don't recall exactly what chapter Chögyam Trungpa brings in the concept of the cosmic mirror. I believe he calls it. The cosmic mirror is essentially the unconditioned aspect of spirituality. It's kind of like the Tao, which cannot be named, you might say. It's kind of like forms of nirvana or nibbana in Buddhism. It's basically the part of the spiritual path which represents that which holds the space for the potentiality that comes forth that we get to see in our experiential world right now. There is a space, there is a place, you could say, in a sense, there is a time. Although this what the cosmic mirror is, it truly transcends all of that. But as, you know, human beings on planet Earth, we're so used to speaking in terms of something that is experiential. It has time. We can see it, we can smell it, we can taste it. We're so used to that way of describing things. So I will, it's hard to talk about exactly what the cosmic mirror is without without having some experience with it. But at the end of the day, what it is it's 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 the one of the deepest parts of the spiritual path, no matter who you are, what path you're on, what tradition you're in. Running into this unconditioned core, you could say, in a sense, that reality springs forth from. It's such a huge part. So if you want, I recommend look into Taoism, look into like you could even look into Hinduism. There's, I believe it's called Nirguna Brahman. It might be one way of viewing this. That's Nirg. It's either G or J. I think it's G. Nirguna Brahman. Space Brahma. And why is it? Sometimes it's hard to spell. Just in the middle of a video when I've talked this long. So anyway, Nirguna Brahman. That's another kind of way you can look at a way of seeing sort of what the cosmic mirror is. But it's the unconditioned. It's the reality which you don't touch with your five senses. You could say it is the self that is truly transcendent. It is the self that is the basis in which this reality comes from. There are other words. I'm not remembering them all at the same time, but many traditions talk about this aspect of spirituality. Maybe even all of them do, if you look in the right places. So let's continue. That taps in, that ties in with the sacred world. The sacred world is viewing that cosmic mirror. You only view that cosmic mirror if you have touched on egolessness, because your human self, especially the ego self, living in that cocoon, living that life of fear, living through all those habitual patterns, trying to cling on to this stuff, it won't see the cosmic mirror. It cannot touch the unconditioned. What touches the unconditioned is the unconditioned itself, and to know the unconditioned, you have to become the unconditioned, and the unconditioned is nothing that this world knows anything about, in a sense. So, very, very powerful. but there can be no ego there. There can be no ego there. So chapter 17, natural hierarchy. This concept, I think he even begins to describe the natural hierarchy. There are some terms. Maybe I should look here. So he speaks in the principles of heaven, earth, and humanity, sort of humanity in between heaven and earth, I believe. But he also speaks of Tibetan sort of teaching and principles, and I hope I pronounce this right, Ilha, Nien, and Lu. And he describes, I really recommend to read the book if you want to get a good kind of foothold on what those are. But it more or less is like, it can be as simple as I think he even gives the example. Don't try to wear your shoe on your head. Like, it's really, there is a sort of natural form to the world. We've figured out a lot of things in the human world and beyond that, and there are many things that you know and understand are the right ways to live. And it's kind of like just taking a look into that a little bit deeper and just realizing that you should conduct yourself well. It's almost like having good manners in a sense. But it's part of being this spiritual warrior, this sacred warrior. You're not going to be a completely lost, lousy, confused person. You need to have life together and understand how things go. Move forward with dignity. Be fully authentic. I really recommend just read the book. That chapter will tie in perfectly with all the rest. He's such a great author in the way that all of the different parts of the book really support one another. He's amazing at that. So, chapter 18, how to rule. Ultimately, how to rule is how to rule your own life. It's not how to rule other people or other beings necessarily, but it's how to have your life in order and how to live well for yourself. How to live well enough and to have made it past the ego so you can live fully authentically. But how to rule? It's literally doing the work and putting the effort in to getting your life in order and taking control of your life and bringing yourself to a life that is worth living. A life that has some of that magic. A life that you recognize the beauty within your chance to live right now in this existence. I don't think I need to say much more about that. Part number 3, the final part, the shortest part of his book, is just the summary, the conclusion, where you get to the real meat of what we're talking about here, of being a sacred warrior. Part 3 is called Authentic Presence. Chapter 19 is called The Universal Monarch. The concept of the universal monarch boils down to being your authentic self, in a sense being your fully naked self. Obviously, we're not talking about having no clothes. This is, symbolic. The universal monarch is being naked to the world, having yourself fully exposed, and it even more so, it's having your heart fully exposed to the rest of the world, to all of existence. You're not hiding anything anymore. That's a very powerful place to be, and I believe we can pick quickly here. Maybe give a quote from this part. So he says, The monarch's power in the Shambhala world comes from being very soft. It comes from opening your heart so that you share your heart with others. You have nothing to hide, no suit of armor. Your experience is naked and direct. It is even beyond naked. It's raw, uncooked. I love that line. This is the fruition of warriorship, the complete primordial realization of basic goodness. At that level, there is absolutely no doubt about basic goodness or, therefore, about yourself. When you expose your naked flesh to the universe, can you say, "Should I put a second skin on? Am I too naked?" You can't. At that point, there is no room for second thoughts. You have nothing to lose and nothing to gain. You simply expose your heart completely. I couldn't say it better myself. I mean, that's page 118. I love this book. If you're into spiritual awakening, if you like learning about different spiritual traditions, if you like taking your own life and your own spiritual path further, as well as understanding more nuance, gaining more of a detailed texture to your spiritual practice. If you want anything like that, I highly recommend this book. It's not that long, about 130 or so pages, and it's a great read. It's not a hard read. So 20, Authentic Presence, Chapter 20. We're here just kind of tying in final thoughts, final descriptions of what this authentic presence as a spiritual warrior in the Shambhala way, in this sacred warrior way. We're describing what that looks like. And it ties into what we just spoke about with the Universal Monarch. You're fully exposed. You're fully authentic. There is nothing that you hide from the world anymore. Chapter 21, the Shambhala Lineage. And at the end of the day, he describes that really anyone who's had a deep contact with the cosmic mirror, as he calls it, anyone who is going beyond egolessness, anyone who is diving further in and further into their authentic presence and giving that gift to the world. Even if you're not from the Shambhala tradition in a formal way, even if you haven't heard of it, you're more or less within this lineage. This lineage is for those true spiritual seekers who do the work and go on this path, and they find the basic goodness within themselves, within humanity, within the world, within all of existence. And by seeing all of this good, this unbelievable amount of good all around them in every which way, seeing this good, feeling this good, and being this basic goodness, which is not your ego is good. No one claims the goodness. No personality holds the goodness or holds it over others. This is the goodness accessible to all, that all of the world and reality rests upon. Coming to recognize that goodness, you see that there is no need to shelter yourself in a cocoon, no need to live in the fear of the ego, no need to hide your uncooked, raw heart of pure, authentic presence. There is no need to hide that from reality anymore. When you get there, when you feel the support and the magic in reality all around you, when you get there, you'll get there and you'll know. You can say happily you're at least a student training to be a sacred warrior on this path of Shambhala. You're in the Shambhala lineage, and with that, you should move forward with dignity and respect for yourself as well as all other people. And always remember chapter 3, what it talks about, the genuine heart of sadness. There is so much in this world that really breaks people down, makes them feel small, spikes that fear of the ego. You're living better in order to help others. You're becoming a better and better trained and more effective spiritual warrior, sacred warrior, for the purpose of helping others around this world. And that's what we're here for. And that's what this book is about. Love you guys. Thank you for watching to this point. If you'd like to see more content like this, of course, subscribe below. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. It really helps my video get to more people like yourself if you've watched this far. And I greatly appreciate it. And it's a way that you can help me out for free. And I'm going to be posting more and bringing more content and reading more books and bringing more spiritual teachings and stuff to you guys as time goes on. Comment if you have any questions. Comment if you have any reason to want to speak to me at all about any of these spiritual concepts or others. The comments are open. I invite you to say something there. Say hi, Brandon. What are you doing today? I don't care. Say anything. No, I will respond, and we will keep creating a community here for truth seekers, spiritual practitioners, people who overall want to create a better life for themselves. Without further ado, I will see you guys in another video. Hopefully it's the next video. Stay tuned. Thanks.